we are now into the direction, I believe, that we are going to be a renter nation. There's not a hope in hell that the government is going to build 500,000 of anything. Our average has been 240,000 for more years than we can count. And ultimately, that's the maximum that we're going to hit. So that side of it, we're not going to overbuild. That's not going to be a thing. And you know that if the government starts building housing units, can you imagine the cost of that?
And we just want to remind everyone that these changes typically for real estate have a 12 to 18 month window. That's how long it takes for this to hit the real estate market. And we've had a ton of changes, Patrick, in the last little bit. So, the decisions they are making today and the tariffs and all that various stuff, that has a 12 to 18 month lag. You're going to deal with it from now until next year at minimum, and then some. Where do we want to go from here? Do we want to touch on the economy in general? We want to talk about the housing market. What do you want to tackle next?
Well, I think that we have to look at, real estate sentiment overall. So I do want to go back to something that I think Carney's platform was. I just quit listening to him. I got tired of it. But it's the continuation that the government's going to build 500,000. And I think the language they used was housing units, not houses, it's housing units. And so you have to kind of unpack that and go, well, what does that look like? Number one, a housing unit is different than a home. I think it's an important distinction. So that can sound a little conspiracy, but I'm telling you that we have to consider that. And anyways, it doesn't matter. There's not a hope in hell that the government is going to build 500,000 of anything. Our average has been 240,000 for more years than we can count. And ultimately, that's the maximum that we're going to hit. So that side of it, we're not going to overbuild. That's not going to be a thing. And you know that if the government starts building housing units, can you imagine the cost of that? So we've got that to look forward to.
I just hope that they don't undo some of the things the provinces have been doing, because the provinces and the cities, like, Edmonton, I know Edmonton's doing the 15-minute city thing, but some of the planning policies I'm doing more and more research on Alberta and what they're doing, but some of these cities are taking their own development into their own hands, and that's helping a lot of these cities. So I want investors to understand that what the federal government can do is quite limited as it relates to housing. They can pave the path, they can draw the vision, but what they actually can do is actually quite limited, Patrick. So I just want people to know. And it has a lot to do with regulations. It has a lot to do with taxes. Those two things, they can directly impact, or they can influence the provinces to influence the cities. But that's it. I mean, the government doesn't build houses. Let's be very clear.
They can't pull it off. And so for investors, the level of sophistication is to understand the economic development plan of any city. JG, you know what's going on in Peterborough. You know what's going on in a lot of the areas that you invest in. You pay attention to what the economic development plans are. What are the city plans? What is the direction that they're going? And understanding that is so, so important. So you have to take your level of sophistication and diligence and play the game, because it's a necessary part of staying ahead of what is coming and creating that financial future. So let's stay grounded in that. I think that we have to understand that we are now into the direction, I believe, that we are going to be a renter nation. And I say that because when we look at housing sentiment, when we look at affordability, what the issues are around inflation. So even if younger people with a dream of owning a home one day, who are decent income, the cost of living, just aside from housing, just the cost of living is taking away from discretionary income, their ability to save money, to save up for a down payment. All to say this: immigration is coming down in terms of out of the country immigrants coming into Canada. But what is increasing is the fact that affordability and those who want to be a first-time home buyer are now having to be renters. So as rental housing providers, we are actually going to see an increase in rental demand from those who just simply cannot afford to buy a home.
So it was in 2015, Patrick, that I remember Rain talking about a renter nation and how this would become a renter nation. And the switch has been quite incredible, how many renters we've added compared to home ownership just in the last 10 years. And I guess the point I'm trying to make there is nothing's going to change. We're just going to have more of that. And like in the last 2 years, Patrick, you and I have talked about it to ad nauseum. how there's an incredible level of tenant out there today that really should own a home, but they can't own a home. Therefore, they end up renting, and they make phenomenal renters for us who are providing housing. Again, more of that. That's just going to continue. The same show we've been seeing is all going to continue, in my view, from this perspective. You agree with that?
I agree 100% with it. And here's where, if I was to sum it all up in kind of where I see things, is that when we look at the individuals that are out there, there are those individuals who are going to curl up in the fetal position in their basement and hope like hell something changes. There's going to be those individuals that walk around going, I think the government is going to save me. And then there is going to be the top performers, the top percentile, which is always the case, JG, who are going to take the time to gain the knowledge, have the courage, get the confidence to actually take responsibility for financial futures, paying attention to the ability and their learning to invest in things like real estate. And I don't think real estate's the only thing to invest in. We've talked about that many times. There's other options. The point is getting your money to work because you've taken the time to understand monetary policy and how we have no choice. It is destined today to continue to devalue our currency, fiat currency, including the US dollar, by the way. And whether that happens in a year, 3 years, 5 years, we don't know. But we do know when we invest in hard assets, the upside for us is that our money holds value as we exit at, let's say, 10 years from now. So that's the kind of my belief.
On that, Patrick, the conversation that you and I had with Jeff Booth, the price of tomorrow, all of that stuff, I actually see this. I think that trend was inevitable, what Jeff talked about, but I did think that if Polyev would have won, I think that trend could have been, let's say, extended. That runway would have been extended. I think now, frankly, I think this all happens a whole lot sooner. And I think all of those things that we talked about that are going to happen, if people should go back, we did a YouTube interview with Jeff Booth. Gosh, it's been 3-4 years now, Patrick. But all that stuff we talk about, in my view, all of that gets pushed forward because of this result.
100%. And I think that, with a different shift of government would have come a shift of trajectory. None of this is a fix the problem overnight. This is, we are here where we are at. And a lot of this is, I think that we have to look at the global macro. We can't ignore what's going on in China. We can't ignore what's happening with Iran and the discourse, if you will, with Ukraine and Russia continues, and the fight between East and West, and what the U.S. is doing and trying to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. will mean that prices are going to continue to go up. But the breakdown in the war right now is already limiting supply. The early reports are that many of the ports, fewer ships coming in, fewer cargo ships coming in, and those cargo ships coming in are lacking. They're not full like they were in the past. So this whole tariff war, and the economic war that's happening is going to affect us. It's going to affect our costs, and we're going to continue to see inflation. Is that going to all happen tomorrow? It doesn't happen that way. That's our job, is to look into the future and see the trajectory. I use that example. If you hit a golf ball 1 millimeter out at the tee, it's the trajectory shifts, and it's, at 300 yards or 250 yards, it's in the other fairway. And that's what we've got going on. It takes time for that to happen, and we have to anticipate where it's going.
And that's a great point, Patrick. And we just want to remind everyone that these changes typically have for real estate, have a 12 to 18 month window. That's how long it takes for this to hit the real estate market. And we've had a ton of changes, Patrick, in the last little bit. So, the decisions they are making today, and the tariffs and all that various stuff, that has a 12 to 18 month lag. So you're going to deal with that next year. And some of it you're going to deal with this year, but you're going to deal with it until next year. That's the better way to say it, is you're going to deal with it from now until next year at minimum, and then some. And that's important, Patrick. I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, I think, let's just validate that. Let's just give a really clear example. Think about March 2020, shut down, changing all of these policies, all of the things that happened. They locked down the country. A lot of that now, 2 years later, 2.5 years later, when things start to open up and we get going again, we're just now feeling the impact of a lot of that. Like, it's just literally showing up now. It's just to show that it is the trajectory that shifts, and there is a huge lag, and we're still paying the price for that. So, that now the pendulum is swung one way, it's going to start to swing the other way, and this is what we're up against. So we have to continue to look at it from that perspective. Lag time. It isn't panic. It isn't overreact. It isn't being emotional. It's just connecting to the data, looking at past trends, risk mitigation. I think we keep it pragmatic. That's what we have to do.
Well, Patrick, I think that was a great show. We talked about, obviously, the election results and specifically what are going to be the impacts on real estate investors, the housing and the price of housing, the impact on the supply of housing. And the fact is we're going to see this ripple out over the next 6, 12, 18 plus months. And all I got to say is there's going to be many good shows ahead.
JG, I'm off to do my meditation now. So if you like these episodes and you want to learn more about what's going on with real estate in Canada, investing in real estate, and understanding how to invest in real estate the right way, head on down to the descriptions below, follow those links.